Question, thank you. It's, okay, yeah, that I've seen very ardent and that EMP is a real threat, that hardening the grid is part of the answer or one of the answers. Why do I feel that way? I actually see several factors at play. First, EMP is real. Anybody that doubts that, go back to 1962, look up Soviet test 184. Also look up reference to an American, it was something fish, the code names walked out of me. Starfish Prime, thank you. See, I told you, you know more than I do. Okay, good night. Starfish Prime. Starfish Prime was our first, as far as we know, declassified popping of a nuke above the atmosphere. Up until that point, there was a theory about this called the Compton effect, for which Compton received the Nobel Prize in 1927. Observation teams set up systems for observing the EMP level that would come down from bursting Starfish Prime over Johnson Island. It blew the instruments out. It was a full magnitude higher than they were calibrated to be able to evaluate, and it blew out part of the grid of Hawaii. That's a 1962 power grid, not one as reliant, so completely reliant today on microcomputers and microtechnology. The Soviets, shortly thereafter, did Soviet Test 184 over Kazakhstan, where it blew out a power station 500 miles away. I'm not a conspiracy person, but a few people have commented, is it not interesting that the test ban treaty comes out a year later, before we can test this further and really get hard data? So as far as we know, we only have 2 nukes, but the data was very clear. This is deadly real. And in fact, at that time, it started some nuclear strategists. I have a good friend, I wish he could be here today, he's coming in tomorrow night, who was one of the Navy's top nuclear fighting strategists. And he turned me on to the thought, he said, you know, this started people perhaps rethinking the whole paradigm of the Cold War. You don't need 1,000 or 2,000 nukes blanketing your opponent's country to take him out of a war-fighting status. All you need is one. And the world really was not aware of that. So well into this current century, people are still thinking in terms of nuclear war. Oh, well, we have 2,000 nukes, the Soviets still have about 5, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So let's not worry about Korea only having 1 to 3, or Iran having, which could be at least 1 to 3 by this point. EMP is a first strike weapon, meaning he who launches first and EMPs his opponent basically has trumped the game, especially when the projected casualty rate will be 90%. I say that to people, audiences unlike you, and they say, well, what do you mean? We're all going to die in the blast? I said, no. But what happens to your water? What happens to your food? What happens to your medication, your command and control, your infrastructure? All of it is gone. 90% are dead a year later. Your enemy has won. Even if we turn all of Iran into a glass factory, they've still defeated us. Even some little twerp of a dictator who has a bad haircut in North Carolina has a bad day because he finds out his girlfriend's messing around with somebody else, so he slaughters her entire ballet troupe, ties a guy up for mortar practice, and says, oh, I think I'll take out America today. He has still won. Therefore, I see hardening the grid is but one part. Far more important is a robust foreign policy. When the Koreans launched one of their ICBMs in 2009, the administration at that time did put an Aegis cruiser nearby, but would not allow them to activate their high-gain tracking systems because, oh, the Koreans might think that's a provocative act. So, yeah, that was my response. So we weren't allowed to gather any kind of data whatsoever about launch capability, trajectory, or anything else, or whether it was even carrying a real load, and this was the strike. That's not a robust foreign policy, particularly when they're launching and the trajectory is carrying over Japan. A robust foreign policy would have been, listen, you blanks, the minute that missile clears the pad and is over international waters, we're going to blow it out of the sky. And if you try another one, we'll blow it up on the pad. And if you try it again, you better be in your bunkers real deep. That's robust foreign